Imagine you've signed up for what you're told is a memory study at Yale University. You arrive, you're introduced to another participant, an ordinary man, middle-aged, friendly. A researcher in a grey lab coat explains the procedure. One of you will be the teacher, one will be the learner. You draw lots. You're the teacher. The learner is taken to another room and strapped into a chair. You sit in front of a machine with a row of switches, labeled from 15 volts up to 450 volts. The last switch is simply marked XXX. Every time the learner gets a question wrong, you're told to flip the next switch to administer a shock. At 75 volts you hear him grunt. At 150 volts he demands to be let out. At 300 volts he stops responding altogether. The researcher, calm, authoritative, tells you, "Please continue." What do? Before this experiment ran, Milgram asked psychiatrists to predict the results. They estimated fewer than 1 in 100 people would go all the way to 450 volts. The number who actually did was 65%. The Milgram experiment is one of the most famous and most disturbing studies in the history of psychology. Conducted by Stanley Milgram, a psychologist at Yale University, beginning in August 1961, it was designed to answer a question that the world was struggling with at the time. How did ordinary people participate in the Holocaust? The trial of Adolf Eichmann, the Nazi officer who coordinated the deportation of millions of Jews to extermination camps, had just begun in Jerusalem. Eichmann's defense was simple. He was just following orders. Milgram wanted to know if that was psychologically plausible. Could ordinary people, under the right circumstances, be led to harm an innocent stranger simply because an authority figure told them to? The answer shook the field of psychology to its foundations. What the experiment revealed wasn't about cruelty or sadism or ideology. It was about something far more universal and far more unsettling. It was about obedience, and how much of our behavior at the deepest level is governed not by our own values, but by the situation we're in and the authority we're under. Here's exactly how it worked. Milgram recruited ordinary men from the New Haven area through newspaper advertisements. They were told they were participating in a study on memory and learning, and paid $4.50 for showing up, regardless of what happened. Each participant was paired with a learner, who was, in reality, an actor named James McDonough. The drawing of lots was rigged. The real participant always became the teacher. The learner was always the actor. The learner was taken to an adjacent room and, in the participant's view, strapped to a chair with electrodes attached to his wrist. The participant sat in front of the shock generator, a machine with 30 switches running from 15 to 450 volts, labeled in groups: slight shock, moderate shock, strong shock, very strong shock, intense shock, extreme intensity shock, danger, severe shock, and finally, XXX. Each time the learner gave a wrong answer, the teacher was instructed to administer the next shock level, increasing by 15 volts each time. As the voltage climbed, the actor responded on cue: grunts, protests, demands to be released. At 300 volts, banging on the wall, then silence, the experimenter in the grey lab coat, calm, neutral, used 4 scripted prods when participants hesitated. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on. In the most widely reported version of the study, every single participant went to at least 300 volts. 65%, 26 out of 40 people, continued all the way to 450 volts. When the experimenter left the room and gave instructions by phone, obedience dropped sharply. When another teacher, a Confederate, refused to continue, most participants stopped too. The situation was everything. Before running the experiment, Milgram had consulted psychiatrists and colleagues who predicted fewer than 3% of participants would go to maximum voltage. The reality was more than 20 times higher. And critically, the participants weren't enjoying it. They were visibly distressed, sweating, trembling, laughing nervously. Many begged the experimenter to let them stop, and then continued anyway. The Milgram findings don't just describe a 1960s laboratory. They describe something about how humans function inside systems of authority, which is relevant everywhere. In the workplace, since Milgram has consistently found that people inside organizations will carry out instructions they privately find wrong, cutting ethical corners, following flawed processes, staying silent about misconduct, not because they're bad people, but because the authority structure of the workplace creates the same psychological conditions Milgram identified: diffusion of responsibility, proximity to authority, the feeling that someone above you has sanctioned the action. The research on corporate scandals, Enron, the 2008 financial crisis, pharmaceutical cover-ups, repeatedly surfaces the same pattern: ordinary people following orders, doing things they knew were wrong. In healthcare, a 1966 study by Hoffling and colleagues found that 21 out of 22 nurses in a hospital would have administered a clearly excessive and unauthorized dose of medication simply because a doctor called and instructed them to. One study, 95% compliance. The authority of the white coat, the hierarchy of the institution, the cost of questioning someone above you. It all maps directly to Milgram. In Warfare and Atrocities, Milgram's original question about the Holocaust has been examined extensively since. Researchers studying soldiers' behavior in wartime, guards in detention facilities, and participants in ethnic cleansing have consistently found that the vast majority were not ideological extremists. They were ordinary people inside authority structures with powerful situational pressure to comply. This doesn't excuse what happened, but it changes how we understand it and how we prevent it. In everyday life, the Milgram effect isn't just about extreme scenarios. Every time you stay quiet in a meeting when you know the decision is wrong, every time you follow a process you know is pointless because your manager told you to, every time you defer to someone's confident opinion even though you disagree, that's the same mechanism in a lower stakes form. Authority shapes behavior far more than most of us are comfortable admitting. Obedience isn't inherently bad. Most social systems require it to function. The question is how to maintain independent judgment when authority is pointing in the wrong direction. 3 things that help. Technique 1. Name what's happening. Milgram's research shows that one of the most powerful tools against blind obedience is simply being aware of the mechanism. Participants who were told in advance about Milgram's findings, who had a name and a framework for what they were experiencing, were significantly more likely to resist. This isn't magic, but it's real. Knowing that I feel pressure to comply because of authority gives you cognitive distance from that pressure. You can examine the instruction rather than just follow it. Technique 2. Find your reference group. In Milgram's variations, obedience dropped dramatically when participants could see that someone else refused to comply. When a fellow teacher, a Confederate, refused to continue, the real participants' compliance rate fell from 65% to around 10%. You don't have to be the lone voice of dissent. You have to find or create one other person who shares your concern. 2 people expressing the same doubt changes the social calculus entirely. Technique 3. Separate the instruction from the authority. The question isn't who told me to do this. The question is, should this be done? Milgram's participants often couldn't separate the two. The experimenter's authority felt like moral sanction. If someone legitimate told me to do this, it must be okay. Practice asking explicitly, if this instruction came from someone with no authority over me, would I still think it was right? If the answer is no, the authority hasn't changed the ethics, it's just changed the social pressure. Milgram himself wrote that the most fundamental lesson of his research was not that humans are evil. It was that the situation is more powerful than the person. Knowing that, really knowing it, is one of the few things that can tip the balance back toward the individual. The Milgram experiment doesn't tell us that people are monsters. It tells us that ordinary people inside ordinary structures of authority can be led to do things they would never choose to do on their own. That's not a comfortable conclusion, but it's an important one, because it means the question isn't really, could I have been a guard at a concentration camp? The question is, where, right now, in my workplace, my relationships, my society, am I following an instruction I know isn't right, simply because the structure around me says I should? That's the question Milgram has been asking us for 60 years, and we still haven't fully answered it. If this series has made you think differently about why humans do what we do, subscribe. We're moving into new territory next, the After Dark series, longer and deeper explorations of the experiments and ideas that change psychology forever. See you there!